Hello, WonderCon, and thanks so much for joining us on Dial the Gate. My name is David Reed. Welcome to our show. We broadcast every weekend on YouTube at youtube.com/dialthegate. We started in October of last year and have now reached over 65 episodes of various casts and crew of Stargate SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe have been featured. What we're going to do with this two-part retrospective here at WonderCon is take a look back at some of our more favorite moments over the past 6 months, give you a taste of the show, and we hope you'll come back on youtube.com/dialthegate or go to dialthegate.com and look at our ongoing schedule of live events so you can take part yourself and celebrate the Stargate franchise. Thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy the show. Alexis, what is the difference between Kurt Russell's O'Neill and RDA's O'Neill? And which one did you like working with the most for different reasons? I'm interested to hear your answer for this from your perspective about the difference between
humor.
Yeah, that's true.
That was the key thing, and from that, all things sprung. Kurt's root, his anchor, was the
tragedy.
Having lost his tragedy, having lost his son, and that was his O'Neill's storyline. He was operating off of that. His entire persona, his whole life became about that. And therefore, anything new that came along that related to or had to pull him out of it, like the mission or things like that. Whereas with RDA's, I never got the sense that any of that was there at all. Like, it didn't come up. It wasn't there. Not that it actually wasn't or anything. But
the story plot is that he's dealt with it.
Right.
Yeah, he's digested that.
So I didn't feel that in him at all. I didn't miss it. Like, I'm not, that's not a critique. That's just a notation. But that wasn't there. With Kurt, it was very much there, front and center. So when he spoke to his soldiers, his command still came from a place of hurt.
It's raw.
Everything came from a place of hurt. You know, and it was fascinating and it was interesting. And because it's Kurt and he knows what he's doing, it wasn't just angry hurt or boohoo hurt. It was just a vulnerability while he's being the general and he's arming a nuke. You get this sense of, you know, he's an amazing actor who knows how to access those feelings and project them so that you can see badass and softy at the same time. Like, that's an amazing skill to have. Yeah. And then put it into a story for us to watch, you know? So he did. So that was a major thing. I think my preferred experience was probably with Kurt. Because it left the biggest, earliest impressions on me in a lot of different ways, in terms of him being Kurt Russell, the star, and then him being Kurt the person, and then him being Kurt the actor that was teaching me things about how to be on set. I had my first steak and eggs breakfast with Kurt, like little things like that, right? The things he would talk about this. And I was, again, at my young age, I was really naive. So that left in an impression that was different and to me a little bit more acute than the impression that RDA left on an older Alexis later on when they met, you know?
That's a fair point.
So it was really, so much of that is tied up in who I was watching what I was watching at the time. And they're such very different places, several years apart. And then with Kurt, you know, I spent 3 months with Kurt, just 3 months, like every day, all the time. I never spent 3 months with Richard.
This is true.
Right? We spent 2 weeks at a time, and really 3 to 5 days in real time, because we didn't hang out afterwards or go get drinks or anything like that. So 3 or 5 days at a time, twice every year. The relationship's going to be different.
Mm-hmm. And you were older too.
So. And I was older. Yeah. I was doing a lot of other. Yeah. I had different things on my mind.
Of course. You were pregnant with Caden through season 4. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you give them enough heads up to let them decide if they were going to work it into the script or not, or if they were just going to shoot around it? I mean, how does something like that come about when you're involved with a production? How does that work? Obviously, I'm sure you're not contracted to tell them. Well, if you're pregnant, you have to tell us. How does that work so that they have time to work it into a story?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I mean, we went into production, I believe it was like late February for the seasons. And I had a conversation with them end of January.
Okay.
And I remember the very first person who I reached out to was Amanda Tapping. She had gone through a pregnancy in SG1, and she was lovely and so helpful to me. And the day that I went in to tell all of our writers and producers, etc., about my pregnancy, she actually showed up. She was there. And I remember it was so wonderful. Before I went upstairs to talk to them, she had a little chat with me. She gave me a big hug, and that was really wonderful. There was this really great camaraderie between performers, but I went upstairs and I let them know, and it was not the direction that they were thinking that they were going to go in for Taylor at all. But they had a little bit of time, and they ran with it, and they made some really, really great storylines from that, I think. And I, for forever, am going to be grateful to them for how they grew the character through that season. Yeah, it was pretty great.
Overall in the role, you started off with a different wig, and you ended up with one that was shorter.
I started up. Listen, I had so many. I had a whole bunch. I had a whole bunch. Yes.
And the costumes, were they an aid to creating the character? Did they drive you nuts? Both.
I loved going into the wardrobe department. I loved it. And they brought me in on a lot of the decisions, the fabrics and the colors and the textures and the feel and how long. And I loved that element, and it helped me to inform who Taylor was as well. The hair thing, there can be like a whole episode on hair, because that was just like, ooh. We were talking earlier on about how Vancouver can be very, very rainy, very, very dark and rainy. My hair is naturally curly. So if we are out in the pouring rain, it wants to go. It just does. It's like.
Was your own hair out of the question from day one, or was there some consideration into trying to make it work?
It was always, it's interesting. It was always a wig.
Yeah.
It was always a wig. Which I didn't mind because of the fact that Taylor was meant to be human and yet otherworldly. It kind of helped me to. Okay. It did. But yeah, I did go through a lot of incarnations of hair until we finally settled on one. And that particular wig was like something like $10,000.
Hair's expensive.
Hair's expensive. Yeah. Yeah.
You let in on a little bit of the fact that your character was very technical oriented. And those characters have a very specific place in Stargate because they move the plot forward with their dialogue. You are looking at a screen that is giving out information in Ancient, which is just a font transposition. and having to say that the star is going to explode, or the ship is not wanting to go back into hyperspace or whatever. Was the dialogue tough?
Oh yeah, anytime I have, and I do remember in particular, I haven't gone back and watched it to remember which one was the worst, the hardest. But I am very good at, I'm a very quick memorizer.
Well, that's good in your profession. That's important.
It definitely helped, because I it's like you have to just memorize these words that you don't really know what they mean. But once they're in my head, then I was able to kind of discover more of their meaning. But I swear I remember even being on set going, and then I think I kept my sides either under, right near me so that I could look at them right before, because it's just really hard to do dialogue that it would be hard to play a physicist or a surgeon, right? Because you're just all these sentences that are kind of memorizing another language. You don't, it's hard to say them with meaning because they're
it's
foreign.
not random, but you have to take the context of the story in order to decrypt what they're talking about, because we're dealing with alien technology, and the alien technology has its own function, but we have to get somewhere in the story with it.
So it was definitely challenging, but I mean, I liked playing the nerd. I like those techie girls. I mean, I like the nerdy characters. I want to do more of that. I'm ready for more.
I one of my favorite lines of Gin's, and I put it at the beginning of each show. I put a character's quote, and it's something along the lines of, I trust numbers more than anything because numbers don't lie. That speaks to a lot of what that character was, because as a member of the Lucian Alliance, and I can tell you a little bit of that backstory, is they rose up when the Goa'uld were defeated across the galaxy. And so the criminals, the most dodgy underworld elements of the galaxy banded together. And so she was kind of, as I would imagine, swept along with that.
Yeah.
And her utility as a scientist became very advantageous. But she had, I would imagine, very little power outside of that. So, to be in a position across the universe where she was then cut off from the rest of that clan that she was with, and with people that she could perhaps make a life with, like with Eli, gave her, I suspect, a fair amount of power. Yeah. It's now I'm in a place where I can start forming my own destiny. Pardon the pun.
Oh, there you go. Yes. Yeah. I mean, and the trouble she's seen and experienced coming with her into this new possible ship, life is, it makes it even more important to kind of have some roots with nice people.
I think one of the things that made dramaturgical sense with the introduction of Zelenka is to split Tech Talk into two and to make it a Mutt and Jeff routine. And that was, I think that was a stroke of genius, I think, by the writers to sort of, split the all the explanation and all the laying of the pipe, as it were, of the storyline technically. And it always had something to do with power.
Of course. Atlantis was always running out of power.
Always running out of power. So it was all about conduits and power, all those things, that we could have a dialogue rather than a manic monologue, right? That Rodney might have. So it ended up sort of turning it into a frantic relationship. Yes, if I seem twitchy and nervous, I literally am trying to fight off a cat chewing through my wires here. No. It's I'm being sabotaged. You guys have no idea.
How was the Technobabble? How did you deal with it? Was it a burden that you were perfectly happy to take on because this is the gig and it's it pays well? Did you enjoy it, or did you endure it?
No, the former. I mean, I didn't know what it was when I first got it. I mean, I assumed like, when I first got the gig, I didn't know that there'd be that much of that. But you like a lot of texts that you work with. Again, the basis in theater is you figure out what is really being said by all of that language. Every genre, everything you work on has its own way of saying, oh, we're in danger, or this is the reason why we're in danger, whatever, and you have to learn that language. So that's what the Technobabble was. Then when I saw, how Amanda handled it and how Dave was doing it, that kind of mile a minute thing, then I sort of found my own way through that, and it really is. It's an important part of the script to explain to someone why we are doing certain things, why we are in the puddle jumper at this certain time. So why not have fun with it again, right? Why not do it in a way that you can have it sort of as structured as an argument, or as, a guy complaining against his boss. And that was another thing. The dynamic really worked nicely to, because everyone knows what it's like to have a boss like that, a megalomaniac boss. There's a great deal of that.
That's never happened to me.
Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. I've had lots of people at conventions tell me that they know people just like Rodney. That's the fun part, right? When you can sort of represent those things for other people. So that stuff is fun. I really enjoyed that. I think we also got way more mileage out of it. Us being frenemies or whatever, for lack of a better word, us being odds to each other, because there's those moments. I remember in some of those episodes where it was like, oh, you're my best friend, you're my best. It makes for a nice little aw shucks moment, but it doesn't really do anything to the relationship, because you don't want to see them going down the hallway going, hey Rodney, hi, how you doing? Because that's just another day at the office, right?
I really feel like Stargate was a part of so many different changes. Like I firmly believe that the internet is a big reason for Stargate's popularity, because they were all, the fans were early adopters. They got onto these online platforms to talk about the show, at a time when most people weren't. But it's still a very almost 80s, 90s style television show to start. So it struggled. I think they struggled when it came to Atlantis, because Atlantis was a very similar type style show, which I personally, I think we need more of. I think we need more positive science fiction. I think the nihilistic thing is fantastic. I love it. I love choosing that stuff. It has its place, absolutely. I mean,
it can't take over.
Freaking brilliant.
Yeah.
But I want a show that I can sit down and watch with my kid and my grandparents and and that was, I think, the big advantage of Stargate. But it's not sexy to writers and to producers, right? Right. They want the latest edgy show that's winning all the awards, and people don't. People want characters that they love and adventurous situations, and I think they struggled with that a lot. But again, Brad was the master of that stuff. I mean, Brad could walk that line between science fiction and comedy and character in a way that I don't think anyone, the very few people are able to do.
The man is a playwright. He can stick two people in a room in pretty much any situation and make it as interesting or more interesting than any special effects that you could throw on the screen.
Well, I mean, Game of Thrones is a perfect example of that, right? So Game of Thrones was a show that sure, it was all Dungeons and Dragons and all the rest of that stuff, but that was not the appeal of the show. The appeal of the show was those characters. And I heard, I don't know whether this is true or not, but I heard on a podcast that apparently they'd almost finished their first season, and they sort of delivered it to HBO, and HBO goes, that's great. What are you going to do for the next 15 minutes on each episode? And they're like, what do you mean? And that was when they realized that they were doing an hour show, not a traditional television 45 minutes that would become an hour with commercials. And so they flipped out, canceled the battle sequence for their last couple of episodes, and just thought, who are the most interesting characters we could throw together into a conversation to make up that extra time throughout the series.
That's largely true. And those became a lot of the best scenes in that first season too.
I would argue they were the best scenes. I mean, again, the effects were great. There was like lightning in a bottle, that show. So many things came together on that show.
But it's like Atlantis. You tune in for the characters.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And comedy as well. Because the other problem is, if science fiction takes itself too seriously, you lose people. It's too specific. If it gets too geeky, all about the tech stuff, You know, like my joke with McKay was speak quickly, because the people who care about it will go back and listen to it again. The people who don't just want to laugh at the punchline. You know what I mean? Like, so.
That's true.
Plus, I talk fast.
Well, that's the other thing.
My excuse for talking fast.
Martin Garrow and I once talked when he was creating First Contact and Lost Tribe. It's like, with you and Nykl on, you have to keep in mind that the script page, they're going to eat up the dialogue.
Oh yeah, we're like
very quickly.
Page scripts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, like? I got some of the funnest times. Funnest? I just made up a word.
You're good.
Some of the best times I had, honestly, were working with him. I just absolutely lovely time on those episodes. What were they? Was it Contact? Was it
First Contact and Lost Tribe?
First Contact. Yeah.
Last season.
Yeah, just absolutely lovely. I just remember just that kind of laughing where you're laughing like there's nobody watching. You know what I mean? Just an absolutely lovely actor. And then Martin Garrow is just as a writer, again, fantastic at writing comedy, writing writing characters that are funny because of who they are, not because they're trying to get funny lines. You know what I
mean? For me, Oma has always been, I've always called it a wonderful part because I got to play an eternal goddess, as I call her. And, but the enlightenment and it all feeds into when I'm on camera with her, being her, what that plays with. Like, I always thought that the dialogue for Oma was incredibly challenging because the cadence, I didn't feel, not that it wasn't human, but it wasn't normal. It wasn't like trip off your tongue, boom, boom, boom kind of thing. It was other than the double meaning to it, the actual order of words and verbiage was very, very different and very challenging. And you can do everything. You can wear, like I wore my Oma blue. I don't know if you noticed. I wore my Oma blue today. And, but you could do that in the light and all of those things that they put on you, and you can make the formation. But then, especially in the scenes, they're so important. The words that are being spoken are so important. And yet you come away when you're watching it and you go, what the hell is she talking about? And so for me, it was they did such a great job of putting that into a character that for me made me pay attention to what she was saying, because she was so different and so much of her own. So all of the things that you bring from the back into the forward of when you're actually on camera are really important.
Was this the most powerful entity you'd ever played?
Yeah, probably, other than myself in the morning when I wake up. But
she controls weather, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely, because she's otherworldly. She's enlightened. She's eternal, incredibly powerful, wise as hell. And, I liked all that. It was great.
I loved that, and we'll get to this in a minute, there were chinks in her armor. She was not perfect. And in fact, she is the resulting cause of one of our greatest adversaries from trying to do something good. She created something that was...
You made a little bad choice.
Right, exactly, yeah. Ascension is not for everyone, lady. How aware were... Because you would watch the show. How aware were you of the gravity of Meridian at the time you were shooting it? I mean, Michael's leaving.
I know.
This is a big deal.
I watched it. It is a big deal. But the other thing is, I don't want to... For the normal fan, the average fan, I think that's incredibly powerful and impactful. But for my business, deal in reality and fantasy. It's, what I do is not reality. It's fantasy. I'm making it up. I'm making my performances up. I'm bringing them from somewhere. I'm not, as much as I love playing Oma Dasala, I'm not Oma Dasala in the real world. I play these characters. So for me, I think that it may not have been as impactful, because I probably thought, he's probably got a great job lined up somewhere, in the practical world. But in the series world, in the show's world, it's very impactful.
You were one of the Jaffa guards in the prison marching down on Teal'c before he turns.
I was. But I was the stunt coordinator, and I was Richard Dean Anderson's stunt double from the very beginning. But I remember the scene because Brad Kelly, who became like the one Jaffa who worked the most of any Jaffa, because they put the heads on them so we could basically use the same guy over and over again. It was his first naphthalene hit. We're all lined up. And he said, what do I do? How will I know? Like, how will I know when to fall over? And I said, you'll know. And then, like back in the day, in the beginning, we did these little naphthalene hits, the Ray special effects. They were nasty because they would just come up and just burn your chins. We had to put all this fire retardant gel on. Later on, we did what was called flash cotton. And they put a hole in your Jaffa suit, put in flash cotton. It would be bright, but it wouldn't burn you.
Okay.
But I was here, and then Brad Kelly was beside me, and then he said, well, how am I going to know? And I said, you'll know. And boom, he went, and then down he went, and then down I went. We're both killing ourselves. But when you say it there from the very beginning, we, at the very end of Stargate, they wound up giving us a soft copy book. There was a hard copy book of all the people who was there.
Celebration of 10 years.
Yeah, and so I got a soft one given to me, and I wound up stealing another one. So I remember I went to a convention in what was the woman who did the writing? It was
Thomasina Gibson.
Yeah. And the convention was at an old town.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yes, it was
There was a castle.
Yes.
We were at this big castle. And I remember I was supposed to work in this movie in Vancouver, but they kept pushing it back. Who's the dude from Godfather?
Marlon Brando?
No, his son.
Al Pacino?
Al Pacino was doing a movie, and I was supposed to be on it, but the weather kept pushing it back. So I said, I said to the promoter, well, okay, I'm going. So I got in the plane. I went to God, I wish I could remember the name of the place. It'll come to me. And so I went there, and I brought all my stuff from down in the basement, all my Stargate stuff. And I'm thinking, people may want to buy this stuff. And I got all.
Was the wrench there?
Pardon me?
Was the wrench there?
No, I didn't have a wrench. No, I didn't.
Okay.
I wasn't going to bring the wrench on the plane. It was more. It's actually the book. So this is going to.
Okay. The memorabilia.
And I remember I got in the plane, and my wife's a flight attendant. I got bumped up to biz, which was great. Then they shut down the plane because one of the toilets weren't working. It looks like I wasn't going to get there. And I phoned the coordinator. Can I get back in the Al Pacino movie? It looks like I won't be going to England. He said, no, it's too late. So we got to England, and we took a bus. And there's a place that's outside of England where it's close, where they speak a different language. And I almost wound up going there because of the accent. I said, take me to such and such. And the place where I was going sounded like Wales.
Wales.
Yeah. Okay. So the place where I was going was Wells. That's where the convention was, in Wells. And I got to England, and I'm all jet lagged, and I'm trying to get on a bus because the promoters weren't. They weren't. I was going on my own dime because it was Richard Dean Anderson and Amanda. And I thought, well, they didn't have any money for me, so I thought I'm going to go anyways, and I'll just make some dough on my signage. Yeah. And maybe I'll sell some of the stuff. So I got there, and I remember phoning my wife saying, God, I'm such a loser. I've flown all the way to England, and no one's going to like me, and no one's going to buy my stuff. I'm such an idiot. What have I done? So I went to Wells, and that morning at 8:30, a half an hour before the convention even started, I very sheepishly started setting my stuff out on the table, thinking they might laugh at me. And, because they had real cool stuff. And I'm thinking, this is legitimate Stargate stuff, but I was new at this stuff. So I took out the two books, and I sat the two books down. And all of a sudden, the vendors, the fans weren't allowed in for another half an hour. All of the vendors came. And they said, that's the such and such book. And I'm like, yeah, that's the book they gave me. And they're like, well, what do you want for it? I'm like, oh. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, so I sold it to the one guy for such and such, and he did it so quickly. Another guy came for the other one, so I tripled the price for the other one. He didn't even blink, and he took that one. I'm thinking I could have charged him 10 times as much. And then all of my stuff, everything was sold before the doors even opened at 9 o'clock.
Oh my God. The vendors took it all.
From the vendors took it all. So all I had left were pictures to be signed. But now instead of being a loser, I'm like not a loser. I've got my pocket full of cash, and now I'm not a loser. So now the door's open. I got a big smile on my face because I'm no longer a loser.
When we started filming SGU, I was the only overweight actor auditioning to play Eli. So when I booked it, I've yo-yoed my whole life, but I gained weight for Ugly Betty. And then I kind of started working regularly because of it. When I booked SGU, I pulled Brad and Rob aside and I said, hey, it's really important to me, if you're okay with it, that Eli loses weight during this show. It's a survival show. We have horrible access to food, so it would make sense anyway. Mm-hmm. Plus, I want to feel more healthy and get some energy back. And I think it could be fun for the character, you know? So the minute we started filming, I started losing weight. If you watch the show again, you'll see me lose about 40 pounds over 2 years. And then I lost the rest after. One of the things while doing it that was in my mind, and this was before Guardians of the Galaxy or anything, was that sort of Chris Pratt thing. I like the idea, because I've never done it, of being the action hero, of being the James Bond, of being that. It's something I haven't gotten a chance to try on that I would really, really like. And I'm lucky in that I've lost enough weight and worked out enough that I've gotten some opportunities, but I haven't gotten the actual chance to yet.
It's just a matter of time, man.
You knock on every piece of wood. George, but that's a weird thing too. I mean, we don't talk about it much as actors. If you watch the Brie Larson video, I highly recommend it, because if we don't get a job, you don't hear about it. But some of the roles that I've been either close to or up for, it's really hard as somebody who loves fandom, who loves doing conventions, to not talk about it. Because when I'm up for a role that I want, that I know fans will freak out over, all I'm thinking about is the fans. I'm like, God, can you imagine at Comic-Con? They're like, wait, what? Eli Wallace is going to play Flash? You know, like that. It means a lot to me. And I almost feel like you guys are all my family and I'm trying to make you proud.
Well, you know, I think we're all connected. We're invested. We're here. Anyone who's in the sound of my voice, because we're invested in the product that you guys created as an ensemble. And so, any success that you have, you know, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, and per Mr. Gibbs, by the way, sorry to look at chat. And Travelers. I loved Travelers. And if you haven't watched it, please watch it. Because first of all, you'll see everyone from Stargate.
You sure will.
But
Patrick's great in it.
Patrick Gilmore, he's always amazing. Patrick Gilmore in Travelers, I texted him maybe every episode saying, you are so good. Yeah. He's on the phone and you can't take your eyes off of him.
Yeah.
He is so good.
He's very magnetic. The thing that you mentioned earlier that blows me away. I'm privileged to have a few of your pieces, and the accuracy by which 99% of them are duplicated, you know, when they're willed into solid reality. They took the time to make it almost precisely what is on the page, and in some cases precisely what is on the page. They're just magicians, you know, those fabricators.
And that's just it. And that's why I say, you know, there's nothing I couldn't draw that they couldn't build. And I wasn't getting stuff back that was kind of like what I drew. I was getting back what I drew. And this leads back to that very early comment you made about, you know, it's like Martin Garrow said, I never get over the glee, the little kid glee at seeing something that I've drawn made into, you know, something you can either walk around in or hold or what have you. There's a big charge that I get out of that, and hopefully that never goes away.
Were you gifted anything when the show ended of any of this stuff that you designed?
No. I had a thing of the Destiny about that big, which is one of the first little blanks that they put out in the model shop just as a maquette. I did have the original cast from the Co-Warrior.
Okay.
But I gave it away to a guy in town here who runs. It was sitting in my basement, right? So I'm like, so a guy that runs a toy shop here in town that has very, very strong sci-fi. The guy does his own dioramas in the store. It's quite amazing.
Wow.
But I just said, hey, any interest in this thing? He's like, are you kidding me? He couldn't believe it. It was like his birthday when I think dropped this thing. It was just unfinished. It had one of Boyd's little tattoos that we were eventually going to put onto the finished piece that had been laid in as a test. So,
wow.
But for me, no, I don't really have anything. I got the little gate they gave us all as, mementos, the Atlantis gate. But other than that, no, I didn't take anything away from me. And as I told you, I don't know. I'm still getting data recovery people to check into it, but we had that flood and I lost 2 towers that were sitting on the floor in the basement. And right next to them were, unfortunately, what's that saying about eggs in one basket?
Exactly.
I had the hard drives. The hard drives that I backed things off onto were also down there. They all got damaged in the flood. So I'm hoping that a percentage of it will be, we'll be able to get back. But I still have almost all my original hand drawings in my sketchbooks and stuff like that. The only thing I ever handed over, because I was under contract to do that, was the final digital versions that were used to create or go into the show itself. I didn't think they wanted all my little scribbles and half thought out ideas and stuff like that. So all that stuff's still taking up space in my garage.
How did you get involved in Stargate? So can you tell us about being cast as Jonas?
Yeah. It was completely random. I was at MGM Studios, or their corporate offices, auditioning for something totally different. It had nothing to do with Stargate. But the casting agents for Stargate were working there, and they passed by me when I was sitting in a quad area reading over my lines for this other project. And I'd read for them before in the past, and we started chatting. And at the time, I kind of had more longish hair and everything. And they're like talking, and they start saying, "Oh yeah, we just got a new role for Stargate." It came up that day, the very day they saw me. The role of Jonas Quinn came up, and they're walking around. They look at me, they're like, and they start whispering, like, "He kind of looks like Heath Ledger," I was like, that could be a good thing. And then they mentioned, like, they said, "Hey, we're casting a new role for Stargate, this new character and all that. Would you be interested?" Obviously, I said yes. So all I had to do was send over my reels, my demo reels, up to Canada, and they looked at him and said, "He's good enough."
He's good enough.
It's Hollywood.
This is true. Corin, I got to ask, did you know what you were walking into coming in after Nykl left, as far as the fan response?
No, not a clue. Because the original Stargate was on Showtime for 5 years.
Right.
I didn't have Showtime.
Yeah.
So I never
one guest spot. In Meridian was on Showtime.
Yeah. So I didn't know anything about the show except for seeing the posters on bus stops and buses and billboards. That's as much as I knew about the show. And I loved the original film. Like the original Stargate film, one of my faves. Love it. So I got into it. I had no idea what like I said, about the conventions and all that. Not a clue. I was shocked. And then when I took over the role of Jonas Quinn, replacing Michael Shanks, I got so much hate mail. So much hate mail the first like month and a half of the show. And then it shifted. And I got apology letters from people who yeah, they sent me hate mail saying, "Here, you're taking over my," and then I get a letter back. They're like, "I'm so sorry. We love you as Jonas. You're actually a great choice to replace him. My apologies for being a jerk," or whatever, So that was nice, because some of the letters I was like, am I about to be killed? I was like,
people are very, very serious about.
I thought I was getting Arkancided.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Am I actually? I feel like Harold Lauder. They think I'm Harold. I didn't blow anybody up.
Yeah, totally.
Man, the pulsar that Destiny falls out of hyperspace into nearby. Please tell us about this story.
All right.
This is fascinating. This is why the Stargate is ahead of its time.
All right. So the idea was we needed an astrophysical big baddie to kill everybody every 22 minutes. And the original idea was have a pulsar. Well, pulsars are like lighthouses of death. Every time they whirl around, they send out high energy particles out one side, out their axis, and it just kills everyone in its wake. Great, fantastic. But normal pulsars go so fast that we're talking milliseconds. And if you slowed it down so much that the beam was passing by every 22 minutes, it would be about as deadly as holding fridge magnets and doing cartwheels. Yes, it would generate an electromagnetic field. No, nobody would care. Nobody would even notice. Like, even if you were to have like a pacemaker and we're standing directly in the beam, you'd be like, what? Didn't notice. So that's a problem, because your astrophysical big baddie actually has to kill people in order for it to be scary. Technicalities don't work. So we went, all right, what if instead we had a pulsar that was starving? So it was just on the verge of having enough mass to be able to generate those high energy beams, but not quite. But it had a companion star. It had a big gas giant, and it was a binary system. The stars were rotating around each other. And when the feeder star was close enough, the pulsar would gobble, snap, munch it all up, get enough mass, start generating the beam, kill, die, all of that. And then that feeder star would go just out of range. The pulsar would use up that mass through generating its beam and go quiescent, go quiet again. And then that star would come back around, it'd eat, we'd have the big death. Great, excellent, small problem. Never seen a system like this anywhere in the universe. But there's no reason why there couldn't be one.
It could exist, but we just haven't observed it. Yeah.
Exactly. We're like, well, we've seen all sorts of other binary systems. We've seen like black holes and binary systems with pulsars. We've seen neutron stars that orbit around each other. We've had like red giants hanging out with other stuff. Like, we've seen all sorts of combinations. Why not? Let's just do it. So we did. The episode aired. A couple years later, researchers found a system just like this in real life. And instead of calling it the Stargate system, which seriously they should have, they called it a Black Widow star. So it's a Black Widow pulsar that is slowly consuming its companion. And instead of being 22 minutes, it's every 6 minutes. But aside from that, it's our system. It's our baby. We did it in Stargate first. And then the universe was like, oh yeah, we totally have this. You want to check it out? Sorry, we've had it in the back. Let's just pull it forward to move properly. So I was really proud of that, because we took this little theory, this little idea that we needed for our plot, and it actually showed up in real life. And yeah, it's my pride and joy.
What worked for me, because I know nothing about the show or science fiction, was his innocence.
Yeah,
that's what I ended up playing. And even when in the other episodes, when he becomes this kind of asshole producer, this kind of stock character of asshole producer, I liked, there was still an innocence about him, that he has no idea that these stories are coming to him because they're actually from his former life in the cosmos, or beyond, pardon me to use your phrase, beyond the gate.
No, absolutely. And Christopher Judge.
Oh, great. I loved him.
He was
great.
So cool.
And the poor guy with all the makeup, that guy, you know, my heart felt for him because, as you know, from Star Trek, I went through it.
You went much more. I mean, you were
mine was 4 hours on and 2 hours off every day.
As Riga? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But, you know, that Chris Judd, that he had to do that every day, was like, are you kidding me right now? I mean, it probably took, I'm sure they got it down to like an hour probably to put it on, right, and then whatever it took to take it off. But
dip his face in gold.
Every single day. I mean, who was the guy on Star Trek? Ethan Phillips played him.
Neelix, yeah. Oh, man.
I mean, that guy was in, like, you know, his entire experience of that show was being in makeup. Like that was his entire life, was being in makeup and taking off makeup.
It's a lot of craziness.
I hope he makes a ton of money at conventions.
Ethan, I think does a pretty reasonable job indeed, for sure.
Yeah, because that's hazard pay.
Right? Exactly. So after season 4, season 5, they brought you back for 200. Did you get any for Wormhole Extreme initially? Did they provide any insight in terms of some of the in jokes that you were invited to partake in terms of your character's development? Like, what does this mean? This is referencing something.
Well, it was great because it was kind of written. I mean, the jokes about the actual show, they had to explain all of them to me. I think DeLuise was there. I think he was explaining it to me. But I just love that it was user friendly. It was every joke that someone who's not a science fiction fan would make about the show. And I love that they did that, and then they brought me to do it, and that it resonated so much with fans, like that they weren't like holding it so precious, like, oh, you can't joke about, the lost city of Oregon or what. I have no idea. I'm just making that
Atlantis, right there.
yeah. And here it is.
Right, exactly. But that's what the show did so well. It could tell serious stories with more serious episodes, but at the end of the day, it never took itself too seriously.
Well, you're not taking themselves seriously, and by hiring me, they've already made that decision to not take themselves too serious. So this is not going to be a very special episode, where I'm dying because I've been bitten by a tribble or whatever the it is. It's going to be more like a wink at the audience by having me back for the 100th, and then the 200th. I mean, the 200th really took me by surprise.
I would think so. It's funny. We lose Terrell and we bring in Picardo. It's seamless, from the same episode. And if you look back on the show, on the franchise as a whole, there is kind of a symmetry there, of going from one great character to another burgeoning great character arc.
You went from one Doctor character to one former Doctor character, exactly. Or an actor who once played a Doctor character. So that's an odd confluence as well. The character, as you said, was designed to be filler material. They wanted to turn the extra 8 or 10 minutes of Heroes into a two-parter, and they decided to turn it into their clip show, because they did about a clip show a season, where they mined all of the previous episodes for their best scenes and their best visual effects and whatnot. So I was brought in to do, I think, 12 pages of dialogue, difficult dialogue, in one day that would tie all the pieces together of these clips and then make another episode.
Actually, that was at the end of season 7. So for Heroes Part 2, you're interrogating the members of SG-1 for what went wrong on the planet. And that was also done in one day of shooting. So for the clip show, the clip show came in later that season.
Oh, it did. So it didn't follow on the heels of Heroes Part 1?
No, the clip show came in later on in the season. It was called Inauguration. So, but for Heroes Part 2, you're in the interrogation room with members of the SGC.
Oh, that's right. So I ended up doing. So that was the second episode. Inauguration was the second episode.
Was your second episode? That's right.
I'm sorry, folks.
No, you're good.
Fails me slightly. I get it now. I had conflated those two. First of all, I never expected to come back. When I did Heroes Part 2, came in and met the whole SG-1 cast. Everybody across the board were so nice to me, but especially Don Davis, God rest him. And but the whole cast was so welcoming and so sweet, because it was a huge amount to do. It was a very complicated shot where I'm interrogating all of them and the camera's going around and around. And this is, that would be a much easier thing to do now with motion control photography. But to do it practically without any cuts, each of the cast members had to slip out of that chair quietly and slip back in when the camera was just at the right angle so you didn't see it. However, I'm supposed to be engaging someone sitting in that chair. And on the other side of the camera, as it's coming around, people are going like this, right? In and out of chairs. And I have to be very focused and look like I'm constantly talking to one person. It was really hard to do. And one little line muff or whatever would have ruined it. So we got through that whole day. I was flying to England the next day for a personal appearance that I was already contracted for. So I had to get it in one day. Andy Makita directed it. He was great. And it all just went seamlessly. And then Joe Malazzi and Paul Muley took me out to dinner that night, and they decided that they liked me. And they thought, I guess they must have thought, they didn't share this with me, but they thought, oh, what do? We painted ourselves in the corner by making this guy such a complete jerk, but we like this actor and we'd like to have him back. So then every time they had me back, this completely unredeemable hatchet man douchebag that I had introduced in the first episode had this glimmer of a positive quality each returning time. So the way I have described it in the past is he's a complete douchebag, but then he comes back and it's like, oh, he's a douchebag who really believes in civilian oversight of secret military operations. So he has one little quality. This is one good thing about him. And then he was a complete douchebag who really believed in civilian oversight of secret military operations, who really didn't want to be a douchebag anymore. and then the next time he was a complete douchebag who didn't really want to be a douchebag anymore, but he didn't really know how to not be a douchebag anymore. Every time I had this glimmer of a positive quality, then I started having slight comic potential, right? When they did the crossover show, I think it was also called The Swarm. Interesting. We talked about Voyager's The Swarm.
Oh yeah, with the R75.
Exactly.
The bugs. Oh my gosh.
And that was the first time that Richard Woolsey had like a little comic. He ran away from danger faster than anyone else. He was outrunning.
Leading the pack.
Outrunning people half his age to get away from danger.
What was it like going through that emotional process? Because she doesn't have a lot of dialogue, but there's much more like going on her face and coming out of Michael's performance as well as Daniel. She's being taken over by another being.
Yeah.
And she is going to be, her personality, her consciousness, whatever, is fading away into this monster that's taking over.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Oh my gosh, it was so amazing to play that, to play two different characters. I mean, I followed the director.
As a party, Mario as a party.
Yeah. And he said, okay, now, I deliver my line to Michael, and then he said, okay, now you're being I don't know what word he used, like swooshed, you're being absorbed like a vacuum, like being
forever and a day. Yeah.
I don't know what they're gonna do, or the ice thing, I didn't know. So I just followed Mario's direction. He talked me through it, like what happens now, and so he helped me a lot to he knew what he wanted, of course. I didn't know what they were going to do. So
right, exactly.
So you could see the difference, when she's Sha're and then Amonet. So it's it was well done. It was amazing to play that.
Christina McQuarrie did an amazing job with the costuming.
Yes.
Especially for the pilot, the variety of costumes that poor woman had to come up with. It's
God,
like, we're just making up. A lot of this, we're establishing the alien world, first of all. We have Egyptian mythology to base a lot of it on, and some of it, we just kind of have to go out there and design some stuff. What was it like wearing some of those pieces?
You feel like a queen, you feel like a princess.
From the robes to that, the Abdonian robes to that, absolutely.
Because it was just so earthy, And then I love getting dressed up and the full-on makeup and the crowns and the heavy dresses, that gold. There was one dress that was heavy and spectacular and covered my baby bump, because then I needed to, when I gave birth in the second episode, it's
in secrets.
I was still pregnant, but
okay.
So we try to cover up as much,
It worked.
But they did pad me anyways to look bigger than I actually was. I was padded and but oh my God, I love both, playing Sha're, her costumes, and all the we're always like the scarves and all that, rope and then that big purple hat with the veil.
And the snake, the
snake
cobra on it too.
The red beads and,
oh man,
and white beads. Oh, it was a dream. It was a dream to play.
Thor was always a kind of up there in his spaceship god.
Yeah, he's basically God.
He even quite literally was a hologram illusion. Like he was a facade. And so, you know, he was the wizard. And so I just wanted to get to know him and the Asgard better. I wanted to know what was going on with them and how they could fit into the mythology going forward. So, you know, and it really, honestly, the impetus was, from a personal perspective, is I didn't have a great relationship with Rick before that. Like, it wasn't that we didn't get along or whatever. He just saw me as a sort of more junior writer, and I was moving up in the sort of hierarchy of the show, and I had my designs on you know, wanting, with everyone's blessing, on wanting to be, you know, a showrunner. And so I felt I needed to overcome that. I needed to connect with him, and so I you know, I decided I needed to write an O'Neill centric show, and you know, engage with him you know, in conversation about, you know, what the character was going to do and how it was going to go, and essentially take his notes. He frankly used to send his notes through Nykl Greenberg, and I rarely had a chance to sort of engage with him about that. So with this script, when it first came out, I went down and sat down in his trailer with him and talked him through. And, you know, that's when I first realized, I thought, frankly, my anticipation of going into that meeting was that he was going to hate acting with the puppet. And because he'd think it was silly. And then, you know, it turned out he absolutely loved it. And so, you know, Rick was nothing if not unpredictable.
And it gave birth to all host of Asgard stories with him, you know? They like me.
So it was, yeah, it was a lot of fun, that episode. So it gave us an opportunity to kind of, like you said, say some of those big things, right?
My thanks to WonderCon for giving us this opportunity to showcase Dial the Gate to an audience outside of YouTube. My great thanks to Jenny Stiven for making this opportunity possible as well. Hope you had a great weekend at our online convention. Hope next year we'll be able to do it in person. My name is David Reed. See you on the other side.